Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, what diseases show up this time of year? Hear what Ben is looking for and the preventative fungicides used for protection at specific growth stages of the plant. The month of May looks good for planting according to Dick Moore's 2022 planting guide. Take a look. It's available on our website and linked in the description. Turk explains the moon's gravitational pull and the effects it has on planting and emergence. Hear about the factors that cause wheat to mature.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars. We have Turk and Ben. Lots to talk about. So Ben, I'm going to let you start now. And of course, everybody's got the weather on their mind this time of year with planting, well, either getting ready to plant or planting or almost done. We got about everything in our area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you go north of us a little bit, I know there's a lot of guys that got some decent, 2 or 3 days of rolling done this past week. So we have 3 different weather models here. This is coming from Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien, and I think we're going to see some relief in the North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska. Looks like between the 3 different weather models, it looks like they're looking at 2 to 3 inches of rain, which is something that they've been really short on this year. So hopefully they have a little bit of moisture precipitation, and that's going to be good for them to get things replenished, because planting condition, guys are rolling planting out there, but they're touch and go on having enough moisture for the season. So
probably need a good rain to activate herbicides and get everything going. Not a drought buster, but definitely help.
Yep. So I was pretty impressed with that on the 3 different weather models that he spit out there for that. And then I think our entire area is going to get, in that 2.5, 3 inch range for everywhere that we sell. So that's good. He also has a soil temperature map, and you can see the diagonal across from northwest Iowa to southeast Iowa, where soil temps are 50 degrees and warmer and 50 degrees and cooler. So we're making progress where we were a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Our soil temps weren't where we really wanted them to be for ideal planting conditions, so we're rolling in the right direction that way. Looks like we have some drought relief from this past Thursday's drought monitor. Some of the eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, some of those areas went from D2 back to D1, and I think with this rain forecast that's coming in for this weekend, I think you're going to see that continue to retreat. And then the western, the plains, you're also going to see relief in the drought monitor from that index. You can look at a couple of the different areas that are wet: southeast Iowa, west central Illinois, northeast Missouri's got too much moisture, but hopefully we're going to be rolling in the right direction for what we need for planting. So there's also a downward solar flux anomaly. I always thought this is cool. So this is where this kind of is going to come into play, what I'm going to talk about with wheat in a little bit. But this is basically showing how many cloudy days, what the anomaly is compared to normal, and how we are actually behind with sunny days and sunshine, and that is going to affect lots of things. It affects green up, it affects growing degree accumulation days, it affects all sorts of things. And
vitamin D in your body.
Yep, vitamin D in your body, the overall mental health of farmers and customers as they're staring out at wet, cold fields. So we are definitely behind when it comes to solar radiation, and that is something that we're going to continue to monitor and watch, because Dr. Sartorius at Iowa State says that there is a lot that can be, at the end of the fall, there's a lot that can be looked back towards radiation and how that affects crop yields. So we're going to keep an eye on that solar flex anomaly. So I'm going to have Alex throw up a couple pictures. This is where we are at in southern Illinois. I think this is just south of Carmi, where Brett Ward, one of our sales managers and agronomists down there, sent me some pictures. And we are at boot stage, so we are at the Flux 10 stage for wheat. And what are some of the things that go along with being at Flux 10? I think as you get even further south than that, we're starting to see wheat head out. And some of the things I'm looking at and I'm thinking at when I'm looking at wheat in this stage is where we at for disease pressure. So Brett gave me an update on that field that he went and took pictures of. There wasn't really any disease present at that time, but what I'm looking for is powdery mildew. I'm looking for stripe rusts, common rusts, leaf rust, stem rust. I'm looking for all of that. I haven't seen anything rust-wise showing up. I haven't been receiving any calls on that, but that's something that I'm going to be start looking for, and be thinking about that preventative fungicide measure, because we feel it's pretty easy 10 bushel when you're using the newer fungicides.
Especially as damp and wet as it been this year, you're going to have powdery mildew. That favors that, and of course your stripe rust and your common rust. Those all blow up from the south, so you can kind of get a reading on that if you look at what's going on in Texas and Arkansas, Mississippi, and see what their rust levels are. And if they're getting rust, then it's coming. It'll be here. So I would not grow wheat without using a foliar fungicide. I mean, it's just that important.
Yep.
And we've kind of talked about it on Cup of Joe as well, but like there's two different time frames that you target when you're shooting for weed application. There's the flag leaf, which is where we're at. I mean, the flag leaf is out, and a huge portion of the wheat yield comes from that flag leaf being protected. So you have the flag leaf application and you have heading application, and the flag leaf application is actually there to protect for the solar radiation, basically protecting yield potential, because you don't want that thing to get all spotted up with disease.
Yeah, it's a solar collector, and if you got a bunch of blankets on those solar collectors, which would be the disease, you're not as efficient. So you're basically converting sunshine into yield, and if you keep that solar collector clean, nice and spotless, it's like a window, you're gonna get more energy into that head.
Exactly, and that would be in comparison to like flag leaf or ear leaf on corn. So ear leaf and up, you want to keep protected on a corn plant. The heading time frame is more to help us with our scab protection. So we have these new genes, these FHB1 genes in certain varieties that we sell that help us with that. You have the traditional breeding disease resistance for scab, but there's nothing really that even compares to a dual mode of action or a triple mode of action product like Miravis Ace to protect the heading. And that is where most guys have been applying fungicide at flag leaf. I think we're seeing a very quick transition towards the heading, because you're protecting test weight, you're protecting scabbing issues, and overall health of the plant. You're getting a lot higher yield response out of that heading.
It's just your timing is got to be spot on.
Yep.
And because once your scab infection occurs during flowering, in other words, the fungus actually feeds on that pollen, that flowering, and so you've got to have that protection on just prior to that. Is that correct, Ben?
Yep. That would be the ideal timing for that. So as soon as you start to see heads show up, you have about 3 or 4 days to get things lined up to hit that perfect time frame. One of the products that I do like, and we use it for seed production, is that Miravis Ace product. And the reason that I like it is because of the window that you have to spray that product and get the best bang for your buck. Other products you want to hit right at that flowering. With the Miravis product, you can go probably a week ahead of time to a week following, and you can still see good efficacy for that product. And we've had wonderful luck with it with our seed production acres. So the one thing that I did want to talk about, and you're going to see this year with the cooler than normal temperatures across the majority of our growing region, and that solar flux that I was talking about, the radiation measures, you're going to see wheat, different varieties act different, because a couple of our varieties are more daylight sensitive, and certain varieties are more growing degree accumulation sensitive.
Yeah, and make sure everybody understands, wheat is a long day plant. In other words, it matures as the days get longer. So back to that sunlight darkness thing. Soybeans are a short day plant. They start reproduction at basically when the days start shortening up. So you're correct, Ben. The ultra earlies, if you're going with an ultra early and it doesn't act like an ultra early, well, that's because it's more heat sensitive.
Correct.
And as opposed to one that would be daylight darkness sensitive.
Yep, and we have a variety of those, and we have both of those in our lineup. So that's something that we can hit on if you have questions on that. You can get a hold of Joe or myself, and we can kind of point out which varieties are which, and it kind of explains why you may see some heading differences.
Yeah. This is supposed to be an early variety. How come it's not hitting out? Well, it's more heat sensitive and responds to that. Now, some of the problems you run into with the heat sensitive ones is that you can get it to head out premature and then get a frost.
Correct.
So there's pluses and minuses, because the worst thing that can happen is you get a frost during that, coming out of that boot stage, right in that boot stage.
Yep. So a lot of things to be paying attention to, and I'm excited that we have stuff agronomically to talk about, because it's been kind of boring with all the rain. So it's getting exciting, and it's time to go.
And I wanted to bring this up. We're going to put the month of May up from the Dick Moore planting date. And Dick Moore was one of our former salespersons. Dick's in his 80s, and his grandfather taught him how to read the signs of the moon for planting. And of course, the moon has more effect than we think, right? But I'll let Turk comment on that in just a second. But the month of May looks really good for planting. I mean, other than the first few days in May, and then about the third week of May, there's a couple days. But for the most part, it seems like every day in May is going to be a great month to plant. So that's good news for farmers. But Turk, you were telling me this week a little bit, everybody goes, so that moon stuff, I think that's a little mumbo jumbo. And I thought, why don't you make a few comments about that?
I was watching, I think it's National Geographic, and they had a show that we watched about the moon and its effect on everything on Earth and what it does. And it obviously, we know it affects the tides as the tides come in and go out, but also it has a major effect on everything, even more than we think. It actually can raise and lower the surface of the Earth as you're in a full moon, and you have more gravitational pull as it's closer to the Earth. They've been recording, they go out where there is absolutely no noise, and they put these super sensitive noise things on, and whenever the moon is out and pulling, they hear the Earth's surface moving and grinding against one another, and then when the moon's gone, then it's quiet again. So it has way more effect than we think, and so that's part of what's going on when Dick talks about his planting guide. It's signs of the moon and where they're at in the moon cycles and everything else for good planting days or not, and bad planting days. It's all tied to the moon, and so May looks like it's going to be a pretty good. We're going to have a really good window. So when we're talking about getting seeds out of the ground, those planting days, that the moon, the gravitational pull of the Earth is actually helping those seeds.
The moon, yeah, pull it
out of the ground, and so kind of makes a little bit more sense. But so when we were talking about that, and Ben was talking about his solar radiation and the lack of it here in the cloudy days, and we're looking at the soil temperatures, and I think you said that we were running 20 degrees below a year ago at this time?
At this location, yeah.
Here in West Point, Iowa, we're 20 degrees below a year ago at this time. And it's been cool everywhere. There's been some guys have been putting seed in the ground, but I haven't seen any seed up. I don't think anybody's seen any seed out of the ground. And so we kind of go back to that whole conversation about, is it planting date that's critical, or is it emergence? It's emergence. It doesn't make any difference what the planting date is. It's when does it come out of ground? That's when the clock starts. And so you can plant 2 weeks early in cold temperatures, but until it warms up, that seed is not going to start getting out of the ground. And then if you plant later, we've all seen soybeans get planted and be out of the ground in 3 days. That's a quick turnaround. So don't get hung up on the planting date. I know the trade is looking at the crop progress report and how far behind we are. We all know how fast this crop can go in. Most farmers have the ability to plant their entire crop within a 2-week period. We've talked about that. Your operation needs to be scaled to be able to do that, to get that crop planted within a 2-week window. And most everybody is able to do that. It might take longer than that because of the rain and everything else, but at least we know when we get in the field, it can come up very quick. There's virtually no evidence that early planting on corn converts to yield. It's really emergence states, isn't it, Ben?
Yep.
So we seen that in the past, that if you can get that corn out of the ground by if it's out of the ground by the 20th of May, approximately in that time range, you don't have any yield loss. And so there's still plenty of time. Don't mud it in, but planting depth and even emergence on corn is critical, and we're learning that on soybeans as well. That even emergence is very critical to maximum yield. So that's really stay focused on even emergence. No-till guys that are going out and putting this stuff in there, and even the guys going out and putting stuff in standing rye. Boy, I'd sure like to try and figure out a way to have a little bare soil right there where you're planting. So if you can get stuff on your equipment to move some trash out, that'll help you warm up quicker and give you more even emergence.
Yeah, it's perfect weather right now. If you got a heavy cover crop and then you got all this wet, cool weather, slugs. I mean, which probably folks up north don't even know what we're talking about, but down in southern Illinois and areas down there, they will eat the emerging soybean plant like candy.
Mm-hmm. And there aren't any slugicides.
No slugicides.
So
I don't know if they make good fish bait or not, but I don't know.
There's lots of different tricks that they do for that, and I'm sure we'll have some conversation as time goes on, because southern Illinois and across the Boot Hill, Missouri is the wettest that they've been in for a long time, and so those planting delays are real down there already. And when I say real, again, I don't know. I haven't heard the southern guys even talk about anything emerged. Have you been?
I don't believe so.
No.
I think they are as far behind as we are.
But the southern guys may be behind when they want to plant, but they also have a longer growing season.
They do. They can plant later than we can up here. So all I'm saying is that it appears that after this next week is going to be a really wet week again, but then it looks like we're going to start drying out. I think we've said this before, haven't we?
We've been saying it all spring, Turk.
I think the next week it looks like it's going to be better, but if the forecasts come true, we get some moisture, and we get this crop put in the ground and the temperatures warm up, we'll have a very rapidly emerging crop, and that's what starts the clock for yield and yield potential. That even emergence is so critical. So
yeah, we always got to remember, when it gets up to in the 80s and the wind blowing, it dry up very fast.
Yep.
And then what happens after that? About 3 days later, we wish we had some moisture.
Yep, and they're talking that temperature anomaly is gonna. We're cold next week, probably 4 to 5 degrees below average, but the 7 to 14 day outlook is supposed to be right at average, if not a touch warmer. So that's gonna help a lot.
Year in and year out, it always averages out. So if we're below normal now, we've got some above normal
That's
stuff
right.
coming.
We should be used to this now. It's been this is our 3rd or 4th year of wet spring. Yep. And I always say, Mother Nature seems to record, like you say, get back to average. So if we have cool, wet spring, we usually have a warm, dry fall. And I know the farmers love the warm, dry falls. We haven't heard anybody complain about when you can get up and combine every day and get the job done. So getting that crop in the bin is important. So hopefully we'll get rewarded this fall again.
We have been in a drier weather pattern for the last 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, when I was a kid, this would be normal. It was always wet all the time. It was always fighting the mud rather than it was anything else. So we're trending back toward that wetter cycle, and I think this is not anything to be unexpected, I guess is what I'm saying. We know that we have a drought also coming here sometime in the next few years, and this thing right now, we're in a weather dry, but it can turn around and be, or in a wet pattern, we can turn around and be dry for a year or two without breaking any of those cycles.
Yep, I agree. Well, I had to go to my friend Dave O'Hara, the host of Hawkeye, which is a statewide sports show that talks about my Iowa Hawkeyes, and and of course I love my Iowa State team too. But right, Ben? So we go both ways here. But anyhow, he gave me a couple jokes. So if you like them, let Dave know. If you don't like them, I guess don't let him know. Okay. Okay. We'll start off kind of easy and then hopefully come up with the good one at the end here. Where do you go if you lose your fish? Where do you go if you lose your fish? Lost and Flounder Department. Lost and Flounder Department. All right. Well, I really didn't get you excited on that one. All right. How about this one here? How does a pirate quit smoking? How does a pirate quit smoking? With the patch, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
Now that wasn't too bad, was it?
That's better.
Ben actually smiled.
I like that better.
All right. Well, anyhow, thanks for watching or listening if you're on podcast. We appreciate your business. We know it's a stressful time for a lot of farmers out there, and we're hanging in there with you, and we hope the weather cooperates so you can finish up planting or get started planting. Please be safe, and hope your family's healthy. Take care.